Sigali Swagwake. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started because we only have an hour of everyone's time. I am recording, so if you have questions or want to go back and look at what happened during this call, that'll be made available and sent out afterwards. Thank you for joining us. I'm a citizen of the United Nations, and I work for United South and Eastern Tribes as the Agriculture Program Manager. And I've had the pleasure of working with the folks that you see kind of with their cameras on, Kelly, Josiah, Courtney, and Kaylee, in putting this webinar together. So you're going to hear from all of us a little bit today. We're going to get started with Courtney Simmons, who is a program specialist at National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and she's going to give us an overview of the grant. And then we'll move into a short talk from Kaylee, who is a successful grant applicant and is deploying a program. And then you'll hear from some of our other partners, and then we'll go into discussion. So if you want to pop your questions into the chat throughout the time, Kelly will be moderating the question and answer session at the end. And then I do have a poll. So if you would go in and answer this first question, I just want to know, where everyone's at, what their initial goal is for coming to this presentation. All right. Looks like a lot of folks just looking at gathering information. Oh, I didn't even spell that right. Gathering information. And then, okay, great. We have a couple that are also planning on applying this year. So I'll leave that open just so we can gather some responses, and I will pitch it over to Courtney. Go on ahead.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us for the fiscal year 2021 Food Safety Outreach Program webinar. Again, I am Courtney Simmons with the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. So I'll provide just a brief history of the Food Safety Outreach Program. The Food Safety Outreach Program, commonly referred to as the FSOP, was created back in 2015 under a joint partnership between the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture and the FDA Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition. The two agencies partnered together to fund 4 regional centers with the purpose of providing food safety education, outreach, and technical assistance to specific audiences. And so the specific or the target audience includes small to medium-sized farms, beginning farmers, socially disadvantaged farmers, small processors, as well as small fresh fruit and vegetable merchant wholesalers. So to the left of your screen, you see some of the FSOP FY 2020 award highlights. There were 24 awards made, and the map shows the dispersal of awards across the 4 regions. And I'll touch on the regional centers later on in this presentation. So in fiscal year 2021, NIFA will fund 3 different project types and will make approximately $9.6 million in awards. And again, I will describe the different project types in a few minutes. And so if you have not had the opportunity to review the fiscal year 2021 request for application, please do so immediately. I know a few of you are actually interested in applying for this year's funding opportunity, but I encourage all of you, at a minimum, go in and take a look at that RFA. The submission deadline this year is April 1st. And if you would like additional information about the FSOP program in general, You can also find information under our USDA NIFA FSOP program webpage. And I'll copy this link into the chat box when I'm done presenting. Again, just to quickly highlight the target audience again, we are looking for projects that will provide food safety, education, outreach, and technical assistance to small and mid-sized scale farms, beginning farmers, socially disadvantaged farmers, small fresh fruit and vegetable merchant wholesalers, veteran farmers, ranchers, niche groups, and it's completely up to the applicant. You as the applicant should define and describe who your niche group or who your niche groups are, as well as a target audience of small food processors. You will also find eligibility information in the RFA. And so I literally just pulled that information here. And so the eligible entities include the cooperative extension programs, community-based organizations that represent and serve farmers, food processors, as well as vegetable merchant wholesalers. Um, and we are looking for eligible entities who specifically have a relationship with the target audience. We are also looking to fund projects that have project directors from federal, state, local, and tribal agencies. Institutions of higher education are also eligible entities for the FSOP program. And so I briefly mentioned the three different project types that are being funded under FSOP this year. And so the first project type is the community outreach project type. And so community outreach projects should support the development or expansion of new food safety education and outreach programs. Projects should build the capacity of local groups to identify specific food safety needs within communities. And projects should also implement customized food safety education and outreach programs to meet the needs of the target audience. The maximum budget that can be requested for the community outreach project is $150,000. I will talk about the collaborative engagement supplement in a moment. So if you are interested in applying for those dollars as well, you are welcome to do so. The project duration for the community outreach projects is 24 months. The collaborative education and training projects should support the development of multi-county and multi-state programs. The projects should support collaborations across counties and states with similar food safety challenges. Potential applicants must have an existing relationship with the target audience and should have the capacity to develop and modify food safety training curricula to meet the Food Safety Modernization Act rules. The maximum budget that can be requested for collaborative education and training projects is $400,000. And if applicants are interested and meet the requirements, applicants can also pursue an additional $150,000. The project duration is 36 months. For the third project type for FSOP this year includes the regional centers. So the regional centers projects should support the infrastructure of the FSOP program by coordinating information within and among the 4 regions to ensure that best practices for food safety and FSMA related training, education, and technical assistance within local communities are translated to a national audience. Regional centers must partner with 1890 institutions, 1994 institutions, Alaskan and Hawaiian Native serving institutions and groups, Hispanic serving agriculture colleges and universities, as well as community-based organizations that primarily serves socially disadvantaged populations within their respective region. The implementation plan must include collaborations with non-governmental and community-based organizations with an established track record of working with the target audience. The budget each for each regional center is $800,000. Regional applicants who apply to become a regional center can also apply to get the lead regional center coordination designation for an additional $200,000, putting the maximum budget at $1 million. So again, the FSOP program will fund 4 different regional centers, and one of those regional centers can become the lead coordination center. The project duration for the regional centers cannot exceed 36 months. And so I've mentioned the regional centers several times at this point. So here's a snapshot of the 4 regional centers. The Western Regional Center to Enhance Food Safety is at Oregon State University. The North Central Region Center for FSMA Training Extension and Technical Assistance is at Iowa State. The Northeast Center to Advance Food Safety is at the University of Vermont, and the Lead Regional Coordination Center is at the University of Florida. And so all applications submitted to the FSOP will be evaluated in its entirety. The RFA provides the evaluation criteria that describes how the objectives, the methods, key personnel and project management, and budget justification sections will be evaluated. Projects should justify specific food safety education and training needs and other resources for various target audiences within local communities. Projects should also support the establishment, the development, and the growth and/or expansion of new or already existing food safety education and training programs within communities. And projects should also ensure that they are consistent with the Food Safety Modernization Act guidelines. Projects should also leverage partnerships with community-based organizations, extension programs, food hubs, farm cooperatives, and others who typically work with owners and operators of small and medium-sized farms and beginning farmers and socially disadvantaged farmers and small processors, as well as produce merchant wholesalers. Previously funded community or pilot projects should identify significant outcomes and impacts of the successful project and should include a strong justification and detailed plan for expansion to a larger audience. And again, you will find all of this information in the RFA, so please review this section. For the sake of time, I won't repeat the information that I already provided, but the evaluation criteria is similar for the collaborative education and training projects. The main difference is the collaborative education and training projects will focus on the development of multi-county and multi-state food safety education. And the regional center projects will focus on and be evaluated on developing regional food safety education and outreach programs. And again, you can find all of this information in the RFA. And so a few minutes ago, I mentioned the collaborative engagement supplement. So the collaborative engagement supplement applicants are encouraged to apply for the collaborative engagement supplement for the community outreach projects and for the collaborative education and training project type. If the proposed project demonstrates significant partnership with one or more of the following entities: 1890s, 1994s, groups in insular areas, Alaskan and Hawaiian Native serving groups, Hispanic serving agriculture colleges and universities, as well as community-based organizations that serve socially disadvantaged groups. The partnership should clearly be demonstrated in the budget section, in the key personnel section, as well as in the objectives. So the absolute maximum that an applicant can apply for the community outreach projects is $300,000, and that is including that $150,000 for the collaborative engagement supplement. And for the collaborative education and training project types, applicants can request a maximum budget of $550,000. And so I believe Josiah will highlight two project stories. So I believe he will kind of talk through two projects that were previously funded through the FSOP. So I'll briefly just touch on some of the awardee information. But so the first project was awarded back in 2016. The project director is Shauna Rock at the University of Arizona, and the title of the project is Seeds for Increasing Tribal Knowledge in Food Safety. And so the goal of the project was to provide culturally sensitive food safety training and education to the Gila River Indian community. One of the main outputs of this project was to develop the food safety guide for Native American growers. The manual is divided into 8 sections or modules, and the project team distributed over 100 manuals in Arizona, New Mexico, and Oregon. Um, the second project that I want to highlight was awarded back in 2017. The project director is Dustin Blakey at the University of California in the Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources. The project title is Identifying Food Safety Risks on Indigenous Food Sovereignty Gardens. The overarching goal of the project was to provide food safety audits and one-on-one food safety education to garden managers at food sovereignty gardens. Um, as I mentioned before, I believe Josiah will talk through some of these projects. But if you are interested in learning more, please go online where you can find this information because it's publicly available. And if you're comfortable and interested, don't hesitate to reach out directly to the project directors. Um, so before you can apply to the FSOP and really before you can apply for government assistance in general, your organization should be registered with Grants.gov as well as the System for Award Management, better known as SAM. I hear the registration process for SAM can take up to a few months. So I would encourage you to get that process started as soon as possible. In order to start the application process, and even when you want to review the RFA, you go to grants.gov, go to search grants. You will see a list of agencies to the left of your screen. If you're interested, assuming you're interested in FSOP, go to the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. To the right of your screen, you will see the current funding opportunities. In our case, it is the Food Safety Outreach Competitive Grants Program. Click on that funding opportunity number, and you will get to a page. You will get to this page. You will have the option to look at the RFA and start your application process. So when you are ready to actually start that application process, just click apply and you will receive additional information. I encourage you to check your document, the format of your documents. If you submit any documents in Word, your application will not be reviewed. So definitely double check your application package before you submit. I am happy to take questions at any point. If you cannot find something or if you do not see something in the RFA, you can always reach out to us and we can get you an answer to your question. Um, I will be here for the duration of this webinar, so you can feel free to ask me questions.
Thank you, Courtney. So yeah, if you have questions, pop those in the chat, and we will get to those during the Q&A session. And right now we're gonna head over to Kaylee, if you would like to take over.
Thank you. Thanks, Courtney, for that great overview of the FSOP program. So my name is Kaylee Feireitzel, and I work with Community Alliance with Family Farmers, or CAF, which is a nonprofit organization based in California that helps support small family farmers with a variety of different on-the-ground programs. And then we do some policy advocacy in Washington, D.C. and in Sacramento. I'm coming to you all today from the Sierra Nevada foothills. I'm at about 3,500 feet in elevation, rainy here. I know it's terribly cold and a lot of terrible weather around a lot of the country right now. So thanks, folks, for joining us today. Yeah, so at our organization, one of the main programs we help small farmers on the ground with is food safety technical assistance. And I'm the staff member that leads that efforts along with a couple of other people. And we've been fortunate at CAF to be awarded a couple FSOP grants over the duration of the existence of this program. And the one we are currently operating under has some features of it that I wanted to share with the group. So before I dive into our current FSOP, I just want to give a little context to the food safety technical assistance that the organization is already providing. We've been doing this technical assistance for about 10 years and have a number of different resources and in-person trainings prior to COVID, and webinars and fact sheets and written documentation. We have a podcast called The Farmer's Beat, BEET, that has some food safety episodes. Really, we try and have this toolbox of resources that can help farmers meet them where they're at on their food safety journey, because it's a process and it's never ending, and everyone's starting at a different starting point and has a different end goal. And so trying to have tools and resources available for folks. I'll drop a couple links in the chat box to some of our food safety homepages that folks can take a look at if you are interested. We have one that has a number of different free food safety plan templates, like a simple food safety plan template and a variety of different record keeping templates. They're all in Word documents, so you can download them and change them and edit them to your farm and your system at your farm. We're going to have them be also available in Google Docs in the near future for folks that keep their paperwork about this kind of stuff all electronically. So I just kind of share that as kind of a foundation to, we have had this programming and this work happening in the past. And so when I was working on writing our current FSOP proposal, I was trying to think of, like Courtney mentioned, we applied for the community outreach level version that is a max of $150,000, and extending food safety technical assistance to either a new community or on new topics, things like that. So I was really trying to think, how can we provide additional assistance that's different than what we're already doing, and or to different farmer communities that we're already working with. And one of the main components of our proposal was to have a cost share program. And so we have a certain amount of money in our budget, about $25,000, that we have earmarked for farmers to be able to apply to CAF as an organization to help get money to have as a cost share towards getting water tests completed for their farm and or a third party food safety audit. So we wrote this in the narrative for our grant application that we were going to have this cost share funding and that it would be a clear and open and fair application process for farmers to apply to it, and to stay true to the some of the main goals of this FSOP funding. We said that we would earmark at least 50% of the funds to be reserved for socially disadvantaged farmers, beginning farmers, as you saw in Courtney's slides, of the different kind of groups of farmers that this program is focused towards. So at this point, or one more thing, in our narrative, we said we'd be able to reimburse farmers up to $250 for water test support that they need funding wise, and up to $750 per farm for third-party food safety audits. And we also said for those audits that they would be limited to the USDA gap audits through the USDA program. It would not allow reimbursement for audits through other companies or private companies. So we're excited to be launching this cost share application actually March 1st coming up here, and it'll be in English and Spanish, and it's going to be as simple as possible, but have still the important details in it that we can then review the applications and vet people fairly, and then be able to award funding. So in a way, this is a little premature to be talking about this part of our program on a webinar, because we haven't really been through most of the process yet. So I don't have a ton of like best practices to share with folks. But I guess my main takeaway is if you're hearing from farmers that you work with that they are, part of their food safety challenges is that they are lacking access to funding to be able to pay for some of these food safety needs that they might have, like testing their water, that maybe this is a way you can include part of something like this in your budget to be able to help be able to provide that assistance to growers. This is the first time in a food safety grant I was able to be able to have part of the budget be this pass-through money to go straight to farmers, which we're really excited to launch. So I think I'll just leave it at that. That's kind of an overview of what's happening and where we're at to date. And like I said, we haven't launched it yet or awarded the money yet, but obviously we're hoping to be in touch with farmers that are awarded the money and get some stories out of there as far as like how that impact was and what kind of impact it had for growers. So I'm sure we'll have more to come in the future, but for now, that's where things stand. And I want to encourage folks, if you think that something like this might be something you'd want to include in your FSOP, that it is possible. You have to be careful about how you word it as far as making sure it's fair and it applies the right way for what are allowable costs or not. And really important to look into the grant RFP and make sure you're putting in there things that are allowable costs. So you have to be careful with how you word it and structure it, but there is some possibility. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Kaylee. From here, Josiah is going to pick it up. And do you want to go over those programs, Josiah, that Courtney had mentioned? Great.
I should probably unmute myself. The biggest phrase of 2021, right? So aloha kaku. My name is Josiah Griffin. I am Native Hawaiian Samoan, and I am the Program and Policy Specialist with the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative. I want to be mindful of your time, but I also want to provide kind of some brief foundation for why the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative is jumping into this conversation. And so we were established in 2013 in the University of Arkansas School of Law. For those of you who don't know us, by that time, Dean, who is now Dean Emeritus Stacy Leeds, who is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. At that time, she was the only Native American female dean of a law school across the country. As Janie Sims Hip, who is a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation, was leaving the USDA as the founding director of the Office of Tribal Relations, the University of Arkansas became a great kind of grounding point for being able to kind of move into this new space of our mission, which is largely to enhance the health and wellness in tribal communities by advancing healthy food systems, diversified economic development, and cultural food traditions in Indian country. And we do this through a variety of activities, including supporting tribes in the development of their governance infrastructure, providing research for the Native Farm Bill Coalition. But most pertinent to this conversation is the establishment of the Tribal Food Safety Alliance. So we were able to establish the Tribal Food Safety Alliance as of September 2020, based on a 2-year cooperative agreement that we have with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration under the Department of Health and Human Services, with the express goal of providing education, outreach, and training for the Food Safety Modernization Act's produce safety rule and preventive controls for human foods rule. And we can't do this work without our partners, full stop. So we are exceptionally grateful for the ability and willingness of both the Intertribal Agriculture Council and the University of Arizona to work with us on these efforts to bring out a more comprehensive, tailored set of outreach, education, and training materials to Indian country food systems. But I'd also be remiss if we didn't also reference the important and meaningful contributions that the volunteers who are serving on the Tribal Food Safety Advisory Committee, like Leah, like Buck, have shared their insights with us to really make sure that our work is meaningful and well-rounded and touches on the whole of the 570 plus federally recognized tribes across the country. So as you're looking at building out your projects or a potential project application for the food safety outreach program, sometimes it's helpful to get a little bit of a baseline as to what other resources are currently available to be able to identify some different touch points that can be used so that you don't have to recreate the wheel, but also to see how resources can be modified to better suit what your communities actually need. And so we, as part of the Tribal Food Safety Alliance, house all of our resources on the food safety, on nativefood.safety.org. But as Courtney was mentioning, the National Center, the Northeast Center to Advance Food Safety also houses a national clearinghouse of resources specifically designated for not just FSMA related food safety, but kind of food safety writ large. So as we kind of reflect back on those two examples that Courtney was talking through, we just want to provide a little bit more detail as to what some of those awards look like and what those FSOP projects were able to accomplish. And so the one of the awards that Courtney mentioned to identify food safety risks for Indigenous food sovereignty gardens was awarded particularly to the University of California, Davis. And in that award, they sub-awarded to the Bishop Paiute Reservation and worked specifically with some of those employees from the reservation to roll out those project deliverables. That's not to state, based on the eligibility requirements for FSOP, that you can't actually switch that up. So a tribal agency could actually be the awardee, and they might sub-award if they felt like that was something that they needed to do with another university to roll out that project in a way that made sense for both their end goals as well as what their community needed. And so the University of California, and working with the Bishop Paiute Reservation, really intended to increase the knowledge of what the Food Safety Modernization Act meant for food sovereignty gardeners and gardens across that reservation. And so they were able to work together collaboratively to identify some risk sources and then train people and make sure that they were trained in food safety. As you might know, one of the requirements of the Food Safety Modernization Act, specifically looking at the produce safety rule, is that at least one supervisor of each covered operation have a receive a designated food safety training that's been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. And so in looking through that work, they were able to run an assessment where all but three locations had records for food safety training. And so they were able to build that out to make sure that it was more uniform. Here, I'd also like to reference that even if you're not necessarily covered or you don't have to comply with the produce safety rule based on your market value of sales. As averaged over the past 3 years, many commercial markets are also requiring FSMA compliance. And so making sure that the gardens and the agricultural producers and the processing units know what's required of them under FSMA can help them to navigate these spaces more efficiently, and also help to open up new areas of or new avenues for some economic returns. And so through this FSOP project, they were able to help address some of those risks that were identified, improving composting practices, increasing consumer outreach so that people know some of the good work that's happening in terms of food safety from these gardens, deliver more trainings on the ground, and then conduct audits and assessments to help fill in some of those other gaps. The University of Arizona received a separate FSOP grant, as Courtney was reflecting on in 2016, intending to work to increasing tribal knowledge of food safety through identifying the training and education needs in Gila River. And so they were able to work through a needs assessment there, pulling together 78 evaluative comments to identify what those areas that could be better served are. And using that information as a foundation, they were able to develop that 4-pronged experiential learning model, focusing on awareness, knowledge, understanding, and how you incorporate that understanding and action or a behavior change that modified the standardized curriculum or other food safety training that was otherwise readily available, but making sure that it was more tailored for what what Gila River was actually looking to do and what made more sense to their tribal citizens. So while these 2 projects weren't conducted by IFAI, as you're looking at what are the possibilities for FSOP and working with your communities, we felt that it was helpful to highlight some of these previous awards to expand upon that work. So if you have any questions about the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative or the Tribal Food Safety Alliance, please feel free to check out our website. I can also drop my email in the chat.
Thank you, Josiah. That was excellent. I think that really gives people an idea of what kind of projects are possible with this program. So with that, I want to open it up for questions. If you want to pop it in the chat, if you want to just chime in. And I'm really curious for those folks who responded to the poll that they want to apply this year, what kind of project they're thinking about applying for, and maybe we can kind of get into the details on that.
I got a question, Leah. This is Buck. Okay, so I know that that it's for farmers on the grant, but previously we received the USDA grant for FSMA in fisheries, and for our member tribes for FSMA recommendations. Is fisheries eligible for this grant?
I see Courtney nodding her head. Do you want to pop in?
Yes. And also, you have to be careful when writing that project narrative, because you want to tell your story, right? You want to clearly articulate the need, and understand that you will be reviewed by a panel of your peers. So it's not for NIFA at this point, it's not for NIFA to determine eligibility, assuming that your project team or your application meets the core eligibility requirements, but anything beyond the RFA is really for the peer review panelists to determine. Does that make sense?
I'm looking at my colleague there, and he's shaking his head yes, so that makes sense. And yeah, and we use that that grant. Actually, we got a First Nations development grant to get that going, and then got a USDA grant to kind of finish that up. But it's with FSMA, there's always still more to be done. And then we was fortunate enough as well to some of the work that we did that the University of Arkansas used our processing code in their food code model.
And always defer back to the target audience that's in the RFA, because you will get a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and people will say, hey, that it doesn't sound like you're eligible to apply. But always go back to that RFA, check the language for yourself, and if you have questions, follow up with us, and I'll actually put my email in the chat box below.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best pieces of advice is to, before you even put pen to paper and start thinking about the details of the project, to touch base with a program person like Courtney, who can really tell you whether or not your idea is going to fit, or if it just needs a little bit of a tweak or a little bit of a language change so that it fits within the RFA. That way you don't get too far down the road and then realize you have to backtrack.
And just to elevate a great point that Josiah mentioned a few minutes ago, but don't be afraid to switch things up. Yes, sometimes there are institutions who serve as the co-PD for a project, but you all can serve as PDs as well, and others can serve as your co-PDs. So it depends on the need and your resources, but that's definitely something to consider. Kaylee, do you have anything that you can add to that? Because you can personally attest to a few things.
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered the main point of it, but yeah, just being really kind of focused on the actual language in the RFP, and trying to a little bit read between the lines, I guess, on like, okay, what does this actually mean or not? And attending things like this so you can hear other stories. Looking at past award winners to see what types of projects have been won has been helpful too, especially for some of the more like nonprofit partners and whatnot, or projects that might be similar to what you're thinking of, to get a sense of activities they included is helpful too.
Great. Well, you've got us all for another 15 minutes, so don't be shy. Get those questions in the chat box or pipe up. We'd love to hear from you.
I saw that Courtney, you already answered this in the chat, but there was a question on like kind of creating a proposal around meat processing related to beef and bison. And I don't know, Courtney, if you have any other like not ideas, but thoughts on like how to tie that into this grant.
Absolutely, Kelly. And so the RFA clearly identifies small processors. So as long as your captive audience meets that description as a small processor, then I don't see why you would not be eligible to pursue a funding opportunity.
Courtney, can you also touch on if folks are not interested in applying this year but would like to learn a lot more about the review process, the review panel, and who usually serves on that, and how to throw your hat in the ring for that?
Absolutely. So again, every application will be reviewed by a panel of your peers. And so the panels are constructed to be inclusive of everyone. So there should be a mixture of professionals or faculty at universities. There should be panelists from the community. So if you are interested, definitely send us an email. You can email us directly, and we will forward your information to the panel manager. So again, as program staff at NIFA, we do not lead the peer review panel process. We essentially hire a temporary employee, an external temporary employee, to lead that process. So if you are interested in serving as a peer reviewer, like I said, you can share your information with me, and then I will forward your information to that panel manager. And essentially, what happens is, again, all applications will be reviewed by panelists, and all of the panelists will convene for a panel meeting. And at that time, the panelists will discuss the individual applications, and they will discuss the strengths, the weaknesses, and areas for improvement. The panelists will also rank the individual applications. And after that process, then the NIFA program staff will pick up and reach out to the project directors and inform them of their award recommendation or their declination to the program. So are there any additional questions regarding the peer review process and potentially serving as panelists?
I just want to add on to that to include your resume when you send your information to Courtney, and include any kind of food safety experience that you have on that resume, so that that'll kind of help get you a little bit farther down the panel review process.
Yes, I have a question, Liz Brown. Do you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I'm interested in your reporting and follow-up process. You know, the reports that are due as you go along, and your progress. Could someone talk a little bit about that? How often those reports have to be generated, and a little bit about the reporting process on a successful grant application?
So that would be me. So I guess I'll speak from the NIFA side. So if you are recommended for an award, you will complete what is called a project initiation. So that will be the very first report that you complete as an awardee. And Kaylee can speak to that because she actually went through that process. And then afterwards, annually, you have to submit progress reports. And so you will use a system called Report. And you will get the reminders. So don't worry. If you forget, you will receive an automated message telling you, hey, your progress report is due in like 90 days. Please get that uploaded as soon as possible. And after the termination of the award, or when your project period has ended, you have 90 days to submit your final project as well as your financial report.
I can just chime in a little bit too at that from our side of things, applicant side or recipient side. I would say as far as different government grant processes, the FSOP program, from my experience, has been pretty smooth as far as reporting and not feeling that burdensome. That REE report system and the time frequencies of when you need to do it is totally reasonable. And really it also has been part of the kind of evaluation and reporting and that kind of bucket of project activities. One part of it that's been really important has been, at least for the Western Regional Center, is I've been attending our Western Regional Center monthly meetings with that subregion, as Courtney was mentioning, the different subregions in the country. And so that's kind of another way that attending those meetings and reporting out on the different project activities that we're doing is kind of informally done that way. There is some written documentation we need to pass through that center too. But yeah, I would say if you've ever had a specialty crop block grant in your state, from my experience, those are much more burdensome to manage on the admin grant side than a NIFA FSOP one, to be candid.
And if I can add in here as well, so the Northeast Center and the Southern Center have both indicated that they are still available as a resource for anyone that is interested in applying for an FSOP program. I usually don't try to speak for people, but I have at least heard this from them directly, so I'm comfortable passing it along. But while they are still in that process too, along with everyone else, of applying to be regional centers. And so they have a slew of resources directly that may be more tailored to communities in the area that you'd be looking to apply for across USET, and that might be more direct than you'd otherwise find at the NECAS clearinghouse.
Thank you guys. Okay, it looks like we have another question about the definition outlining what qualifies as a small processor. Was that what you're responding to, Courtney, with the comments?
Yes.
Okay, great. Do you want to give us just a quick summary?
Um, sure. So again, I always encourage you to defer back to that RFA, because it'll clearly outline who meets the definition of the target audience. So to answer the question, if that small processor is impacted by the Food Safety Modernization Act, specifically the preventive controls for human food, then it is you are definitely encouraged to move forward with that target audience. And so, is there a specific definition outlining what qualifies as a small processor? To answer that question, the small, you would defer to the definition under FSMA.
Okay. So I'm just looking at these poll responses, and we have 8 people who are planning on applying this year. Does anyone want to chime in on what kind of projects they're looking at applying with? Don't be shy.
Well, I'm probably stepping out of my pay grade, but I'm a farm guy from Red Lake, and we got a project going on, and we really want to be professional. We really want to be up to par with our food safety. I mean, we're getting ready to well, we've been training tribal members in agricultural practices, and growing is just one part of the program. Food safety has got to be a big part of what we're doing up here. So that's why we're listening from Red Lake.
Great. Thanks for speaking up. Okay. Last chance if anybody wants to share their projects. If not, I'm going to launch the second poll. Okay. All right. Well, you have Courtney's email. I'll save these chat notes and send them out along with the recording. And then if you all wouldn't mind just answering this quick wrap-up question, we just want to know how helpful it was to attend this webinar today. Josiah, Courtney, Kelly, do you have any closing comments before we wrap up?
So thank you for inviting me to participate in this meeting. Like I said, I'm available to take questions. I see a couple of you might still have some outstanding questions, or at least one of you. So again, if you're not comfortable asking now on camera, or if you're not comfortable following up now on camera, you can email me or call me if it's relevant to the FSOP, of course.
the one thing I think I'd say is that, and this is something that we say regularly, but tribal nations and communities have been engaging food safety since time immemorial. But the landscape for how we look at food safety, the microbial risks across our environment, how food is transported from one place to another, all of that's changed. And so I just want to thank you for taking an interest in food safety. And I am happy to be here to share the work that we're doing and to be available as a resource as needed.
Thank you. And Kaylee, do you have any closing thoughts? Sorry, I didn't mention your name.
Oh, no, that's okay. Just thanks to all, and I encourage folks to keep learning about it and apply to it. I really think for food safety technical assistance government programs, this is one of the best ones as far as allowing for flexibility and meeting smaller farmers and producers' needs that are, you know, a little bit more challenging generally than other groups of farmers, you know, require more time and more resources and more energy to really make an impact. So apply.
Awesome. All right. With that, I just want to say Yawanko. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It was great to see your faces. It was great to hear your questions, and I hope that you got a lot out of it. Of course, you can email Courtney, you can email Josiah, you'll get an email from me with the recording and the notes, so you'll have all of our contact information. And we really are here to help you. We want to see you succeed. We want to see you utilizing these programs and getting where you want to go. So thank you. Take care, everyone.